Hello and welcome to another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. I'm Lady Trinette Wilson. I want to welcome everyone. Today I wanted to talk and lecture about a woman who really changed medicine unbeknownst to her, and really was the catalyst for a lot of conversation around Black people and how they are treated in the healthcare industry. Right here in my home state of Texas, we just had a nurse who mistreated a woman who came in to give birth, and she actually just was fired from her job because of the way the woman was treated. But it didn't compare to anything like what Miss Lacks went through. And I think you're going to find her story very interesting. Now, she was actually born Loretta Pleasant on August the 1st, 1920, in Roanoke, Virginia. We don't know why she changed her name to Henrietta, but they used to call her Henny back in the day. So maybe that maybe have something to do with it. Now, her mother's name was Eliza, and her father's name was John Randall. Now, unfortunately, her mother passed away in 1924 when she was only 4 years old when she was giving birth to her 10th child. Now, as a mother myself, I could not imagine giving birth to 10 children with no anesthetic, no, blocker, anything to take the pain. So, unfortunately, her mom did pass. And her father could not handle all these children, 10 children, of course. So he actually kind of dispersed all the kids out to different relatives. So Loretta, at the time, who would later go on to be Henrietta, she actually moved with her paternal grandfather, and he lived on this plantation in a log cabin. This was in Clover, Virginia. So this is the 1920s. Can you imagine on one side of the country where the Black people had migrated to during the Great Migration from the South to the North? They were living much different. The Roaring Twenties. You had the Harlem Renaissance happening then. And then here in Virginia, you had a Black man living in a log cabin on what used to be a plantation. Just something else how the dichotomy is, how one people lived one way and the other lived the other. But this is what the reality for Black people was back then. So on that particular plantation, another man lived there. His name was David Day Lacks. That's who she would later go on to actually marry. Now, she had her first child by David when she was only 14 years old. And remember, back in those days, they really had kids young. They were in relationships when they were very young. So that's just the way it was. And they did get married, however, on April the 10th. And she also had another child when she was 19 by him. That next child, Elsie, she was born with cerebral palsy, and she later passed away in what they called a Negro asylum. And that's where they would put people who had disabilities or mental illnesses back in those days. And that's actually where she passed. She was only 15 years old at the time. Unfortunately, it's just, it's kind of hard. We don't have these state homes anymore. So families are forced to take care of children with mental illnesses by themselves. Now, sometimes they'll, take them to counseling, but just like what just happened to Rob Reiner and his wife, they had a son who was going through mental illness, and they didn't have any, I guess, with as much money as they had, I guess they still don't have a place where they can put mentally ill people who may not be, visibly mentally ill, like, schizophrenia or maybe a psychopath, but they're definitely having some issues. So it's just sad all around. She had to go live with her grandfather. So she got married, started having children at a really young age, and that's how it was. And while they were there, they were working on this plantation that was a farm that had tobacco. So later on, what happened in her life, I wonder if it had anything to do with her working in these tobacco at this tobacco farm. Because my thing is, if you get cancer from smoking, then surely touching it every day with your hands had to have something of an effect on her, but we don't know. So the family moved on to Baltimore. He got tired of working at that plantation farm, got tired of seeing his wife work there, so they actually moved on to Baltimore, where he got a job at a plant where David was working. And she gave birth to three more children. But on that last child, after giving birth, some things was happening to her body. One was her stomach. It was bloated. She was bloated in her belly area, and she was having a lot of pain. And she didn't ever really stop bleeding from the last baby. So she was really, it was going overboard. She was in pain. So she went to the hospital, John Hopkins, there in Baltimore, Maryland. Well, while there, they discovered that she had a tumor in her cervix, and it was inoperable. It was metastasized throughout her whole body. She was only 30 years old at the time. This was in January 1951. Her last baby was born in November, so this was just a few months after she had her child. Now, while she was at the doctor, they took a biopsy, as they often do. But without her knowledge, they took her biopsy and the cells from it, and it really became testing for science throughout history and throughout time for cancers of all kinds and really medical conditions of all kinds, because when they took the cells from the tumor, what they found was with these cells, they kept multiplying, and they had never seen anything like that. They called it the tHeLa cell, and the reason it was called the tHeLa cell is because it was her first and last names. These cells became the first immortal human cells to ever live, and it became a whole line. Do you all know that they developed the polio vaccine, advanced cancer treatments? They studied HIV and AIDS. They improved virtual fertilization. They tested radiation, chemotherapy, and vaccines. And they contributed to space research and gene mapping, all from this woman's cell. Henrietta Lacks cells have involved tens and thousands of scientific studies. Yet she's never been credited, nor has she ever been paid, nor does she even know that her cells were even used. You see, she died on October the 4th, 1951, from cancer. It had metastasized all the way throughout her body, but she did not know that. Now, meanwhile, pharmaceutical companies made millions, eventually billions of dollars using the tHeLa cell, while the Lacks family struggled with poverty and lacked even access to their own adequate medical care. So this really is really sad to know that's how her life ended. But just know that the polio vaccine, anytime there was cancer, and the way they treated her cancer treatment is they planted these radiation tubes inside of her that shot radiation into the tumor, but it was already too far gone. This is the story of Henrietta Lacks. So all medical chemotherapy, anything to do with cancer, even women who are now having children who weren't able to have kids, can now credit that to a woman in our Black history. So I hope that you enjoyed our lesson today. As you know, it's always for entertainment and educational purposes only, and the Fair Act use is in effect. I want to thank you all for joining me, taking some time out of your schedule to learn about these really important Black people in our history. Now, continue to learn. Click down below. I have some other great lessons for you to learn from. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Thank you for watching.